Why everyone wants to move to the USA? When you watch American movies or social media feed, you get the feeling that all of America lives in nice houses with swimming pools, drives convertibles, and runs through green parks in the morning. But once you get there in America, the picture starts to crack. In other parts of New York and California, the houses really are nice and success seems to be in the air. But in the next neighborhood, you see people living literally paycheck to paycheck. In the morning, they rush to work with coffee in hand. In the evening, they scroll their phones checking bills that never add up. Americans rarely talk about poverty out loud, but it is visible. 1 in 8 is officially poor, and they're not just homeless people on the outskirts, but also those who work full-time but still cannot afford to save. People take out loans to study, buy houses or cars, sometimes even just to pay a medical bill. You can hear people say I live on loans, and no one is surprised. Young people with degrees from prestigious universities begin adult life with tens of thousands of dollars in deficit. A mortgage turns the dream of owning a home into a 30-year commitment. Even everyday expenses are often spread across a credit card. Want to launch a startup in the US? People are really hyped about them here. Silicon Valley seems like a billionaire-making machine, but the reality is harsh. Half of new companies don't live longer than 5 years. Behind every high-profile IPO are dozens of projects that quietly died and no one remembers. And yet America still believes in the dream. People continue to strive forward even with debts and worries. They believe that tomorrow can be better than today. There is a special strength and a special vulnerability in this. The American dream is sold gloriously, but it is paid for with stressful weekdays, loans, and hope. And perhaps this hope is the country's main currency. Everyone has heard the phrase American dream, especially in regard to those planning to move to the United States or already have. But what does it really mean? The phrase came about in 1931 when American writer and historian James Adams introduced the term in the book The Epic of America. He said that everyone deserves a piece of a better life. A little one. Even before the term existed, people came to America for freedom and opportunity. The very concept of the American dream didn't even exist back then. They saw the crossing of the Atlantic as a chance to start everything from scratch, or just to start. In 1928, the stock market crash is still a year away. Herbert Hoover is running for president of the United States. His campaign promise was a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage. This reminds me of bush lags, a simple recipe for success. Or collapse, right? Soon the stock market crashed and America plunged into the Great Depression, leaving millions of people without jobs and hope. And it was during this difficult time that people began to talk about the path to better life, which is how the idea of the American dream came to be. The beginning of 20th century. You're a migrant and you arrive in America not knowing a word of English. What is the main symbol of migrants? What is it? Tell me. The Statue of Liberty, of course. It made ships with settlers as they approached New York. It was built in France, by the way, and given to America for the 100th anniversary of American independence. The statue's front panel is engraved with lines that serve as a kind of manifesto for those seeking refuge and a new life in America. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shores, and these the homeless tempest toast to me. Now tell me the ideal American life of the 50s. Come on, Zoomers. What do you know about the ideals of the 50s? A small house in the suburbs with a car, a fridge full of all sorts of junk like peanut butter and Dr. Pepper. It was a time when modest comfort was considered the height of happiness. By the 1970s, the image of happiness was changing. For example, in the Brady Bunch show, which I'm sure none of us watched, there already were 2 cars by a house. The kitchen was huge and the characters spent their vacations in Hawaii. The American dream had become more luxurious, but the idea remained the same. From the 80s onwards, American TV shows and movies flaunted a new level of success, a true luxury lifestyle. A house on a large plot with several floors, many rooms, and of course servants. Housewives no longer need to clean or cook themselves, the cook takes care of it, while the heroine herself is busy shopping and attending social events. The American dream was no longer about just success but true prosperity. In the 1980s, the American dream was sold particularly aggressively. It was a kind of golden age of consumer ideology. Ronald Reagan was the president of the United States, and his policies were called Reaganomics. The focus is on lowering taxes, deregulation, freedom of business, optimism, the cult of success, and individualism dominate popular culture. The economy is growing after the crisis of the 70s, and this is accompanied by propaganda of the idea that anyone can get rich. Advertising in the 80s was loud and flashy and almost always associated happiness with consumption. A house, a car, expensive stuff, brands become symbols of success. Nike, Levi's, Apple, Sony Walkman.
Sony Walkman. The Walkman from Sony, the one and only.
Movies. A prominent 1980 film, Wall Street, had "Greed is good" as its slogan and became the symbol of the decade in the USA. The heroes of Back to the Future and Top Gun are confident, free, and self-made. In the music industry, MTV shows rich life as a norm to strive for. Magazine covers and talk shows constantly feature business, sports, and music stars that showcases luxury, yachts, mansions, designer clothes. The ideal life envisages a private home in the suburbs, 2 cars, college for the kids, and vacations abroad, all made possible by credit cards and affordable consumer loans. In the 1980s, the credit card market in the US was growing rapidly, with advertising emphasizing that success is available right now. The idea was pushed that if you worked hard and put in the effort, you could live like Richard Gere and walk around in the Armani suit. In reality, people were getting deeper into the system of debt. Mortgages, car loans, student loans, credit cards, and so in the 80s, the American dream looked especially glamorous, with the cult of wealth, hedonism, and greed driving human progress. But even then, the foundation for this dream was not only effort and work, but also loans on a mass scale. So, how did the American dream evolve? The 1950s ideal is suburban family home. Millions of Americans moved to the suburbs after the Second World War. TV shows and advertising paint a picture of a white house with a lawn, 2 children, a car by the garage, and the symbols of a washing machine, refrigerator, and TV. The message was that if you work honestly, you will have your own home and happy life. In the 80s, it was about luxury and greed. You were supposed to strive for and flaunt your wealth, as told by Hollywood films, MTV videos, sport cars, and brand advertisements. Armani, Rolex, BMW, yachts, and penthouses were the symbols. The conveyed message was, you can't just be successful, you have to be rich. Anything is possible if you're ambitious. But the reality was rapid growth of credit card debts. Behind the veneer of luxury, there were mounting loans. 2000s was the time of internet startups, and ideally you had your own business. Technological innovations were advanced, and the world was inspired by stores of Google, Amazon, and Facebook. Advertising and media promote the image of young genius in a garage. The symbol were laptop, the first iPhone, and open space offices. And the message was, you don't have to be a billionaire to be successful. A business idea and startup were enough. And the reality was the dot-com bubble, student loan debts, and the mortgage crisis of 2008. Conclusion? Not all startups are successful. The 2020s are about personal brand and social networks. Only the appearance of success is enough. If you're not internet famous, you don't exist. TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube form a new landscape of influencers, bloggers, and crypto millionaires. Symbols are personal brand, lifestyle vlogs, crypto. Well, you get the idea. The message is, everyone can become a star and live a successful life. All you need is a smartphone and charisma. The reality behind the bloggers are a ton of loans, debts, rented apartments, and pushing only an image of rather than actual success. To sum it up, the core of the issue does not change. A dream is always sold through a pretty picture, but is most often paid for with debt. The American dream has always been a promise. If you work hard, you can achieve anything. A house with a lawn, a car in the garage, a decent college for your kids. But behind the facade, statistics paint a far more controversial picture. Today, more than 36 million people in the United States officially live below the poverty line. This is about 11% of the population. When taking into account the cost of housing, taxes, and real purchasing power, the proportion of poor people is even higher, almost 13%, and so every 8th American turns out to be officially poor. Not everyone has a job in America. Unemployment is relatively low, just about 4%, but that's an average figure. It doesn't show regional imbalances and the large number of people who work part-time or are forced to accept low-paying positions. The heaviest burden in the United States is debt. Total household debt exceeded $18 trillion in 2025. That figure includes everything from suburban home mortgages to car loans, student loans, and credit cards. More than 4% of all debts are already overdue. Student loan debt alone in America is about $1.6 trillion, and a tenth of graduates are unable to pay it for more than 3 months in a row. It's no wonder that 2/3 of Americans admit to living paycheck to paycheck. For them, any unexpected expense becomes a problem. The Federal Reserve notes that about 13% of adults don't have $400 for an emergency expense, either from savings or debt. What about entrepreneurship, which is so often touted as the path to the dream? The numbers here are also prosaic. Statistics show that half of new companies close within the first 5 years, and by the 10th year, only a third remains. Silicon Valley remains a symbol of innovation, but behind the glittering success stories lie many bankruptcies. Thus, behind the slogans about freedom and equal opportunities lies reality, a country where millions live in poverty, where consumption is founded on loans and success is available to few. The American dream exists, but for most it turns out not to be a gift, but a long-term loan that must be repaid over decades.